All right, well, why don't we go ahead and get started, since we've got just about everyone now, and I don't want to make anybody wait too long. So, revisions to agenda. Do we have anything we want to change today?
Just so you know, at the end and where it says other business, because JB didn't put in Alice's updates.
CVRPC update, wasn't it? Wasn't we called that?
Yes, we did. We did make that change.
I just have a couple of important announcements.
Sorry about that, Alice.
I had a question. I had a question as to whether there was any reason to be touching base on the PATH presentation last weekend.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah.
And why don't we talk about that during other business? I think that makes sense. But I do think we should touch base.
Transportation corridors.
Active transportation corridor, that's that.
Yes, ATC. Yeah, I think it's a good idea. All right. I'm guessing no public forum. I don't see any members of the public. So I think we can jump straight into approval of minutes. I didn't have a chance to look at this packet's minutes, so I don't know, Anne-Marie, if you've had any comments.
Yes, I do. As in the minutes, with Brian's presentation, he had mentioned the Waitsfield floodplain restoration project. And the minutes do state that there are 6 reconnection projects along the Mad River. Well, in the meeting, he did list what those 6 were. And so I was wondering if maybe we might want to include that listing in the minutes.
If I recall, I only got down a few of them. Did you get the others?
Well, I got Lower Fairgrounds.
There's the fairgrounds, the Austin
parcel.
There's the
LaRoe
Memorial Park thing. I forget what it is.
Is that different than LaRoe?
Virginia Memorial
Virginia.
Park.
Yep.
Virginia Memorial Park.
Okay.
The Perot parcel.
There's what's her name? Kenny Perot's property.
Yep, Perot parcel.
The fairgrounds. I don't think there's 6.
That's all I had.
There was at least one that was sensitive, if not 2, on that list. I remember him saying that they haven't. So I think that it would be smart of us to make sure that what we put in there is okay to go because of ongoing conversations with those landowners.
Okay.
Not because they're not going forward, but because he doesn't want us out, he didn't want to get out ahead of himself. I remember him saying that.
Well, that's excellent point, Becca.
I can go back in what we contracted for and get them named. I'll just look it up on the Winooski Basin Water Quality website, because that's where we have them. But I know it's Kinney, I know it's the Austin parcel, the fairgrounds, the Virginia Memorial area.
So those 5 we have.
I count 4. 5,
Oh,
yeah.
It's
LaRue is not
5.
Austin.
It's Lower.
Yes.
Fairgrounds.
The LaRue swimming hole area.
That's what I have, right? LaRue Park, yep.
And we had thought about the flood chute at Kenyon's, but we haven't pursued that one. And we have George Schenk had wanted to have his property included, but we've never gotten any contact on that. So actually, as I go through the LHMP with you guys, it's all in there. It's all listed.
Well, but in the meeting, I wrote down these 5. And so my proposal is that we include writing down those 5, because it was mentioned in the meeting. So my question is, do we want to put it in the minutes?
I don't think it really matters. It's just that we have the floodplain project moving forward that's identified in the LHMP.
I think that if we're gonna put it in the minutes, we should just verify with him that it's okay, because I felt like there was at least one he let out that he wasn't necessarily comfortable fully sharing. So that's my only, like, I'm fine with them being in there with a check, because I don't wanna.
Yeah, I would just vote to call it the floodplain project that we got Whiskey Basin water quality money for.
Well, that's what we have now.
I'd leave it that way.
What's the time frame that's conversations have become public?
It is public.
Well, they might say it's public in your world, but it's not in ours.
It's, yeah, I've told you about it a number of times in planning commission meetings.
But it's not on our agenda. It's not, we're not active on it, babe.
Well, okay, I mean, it's all part of the CVRPC updates, which I bring to the planning commission. And I brought actually from the LHMP 3 or 4 possible floodplain reconnection projects. And I asked the BWIC, would these qualify? Because the BWIC is all about phosphorus reduction. That this could do flood mitigation and phosphorus reduction that enters the river. And yes, we qualified. So project was put together. It was approved by the BWIC, which is where it would be approved by. It went out to bid. Watershed Consulting has been awarded the contract, and it's for floodplain reconnection possibilities. Now, the consultant may come in and say, no, this one's fine. It doesn't need anything. But that's really the crux of it. I brought it into CVRPC updates. It's public in the BWIC. The select board knows about it because they approved going ahead because this is of no cost to the town. And it's in our LHMP, which I'm going to review with you in a little while. Fred Messer asked me as part of the emergency management presentation tonight. So it's public. Kinney knows about it. Mad River Path should know about it, but they ignore it. And Friends of the Mad River know about the project. Conservation Commission knows about the project because we went to them about it. Brian presented to them.
So what's the next expected action on that? In our world?
I don't know. I haven't been to a BWIC meeting. In your world, there's really planning commission world. I mean, you just sit back and get updates. I mean, the next step here is watershed consulting.
Just soak it in. Put it on the list.
Do we have a general consensus on whether to leave as is in the minutes or list out the properties? It sounds like there's some preference towards leaving it as is to avoid tipping the hand if there's any sensitive conversations to be had. I'm okay with that.
I'm okay with that as well.
All right. Were there any other comments to the minutes? We have a motion to adopt the minutes of the March 18th meeting.
I move to adopt the minutes that Carol Chamberlain has prepared beautifully, as always.
And a second. Thanks, Bob. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Emma. All right. So that gets us to our emergency management update from Fred Messer, who I see in the little tiny window on the owl, but I'll turn things over to you.
Okay. Thank you for inviting me and Alice. Guess Alice ends anyway.
Yeah.
Usually. I appreciate any time I can talk about emergency management, my passion. And normally when I'm talking about emergency management, I'm talking about individual preparedness, family preparedness, how not to become a victim. And it dawned on me today that this is a different audience that I have here. We're talking to folks in town government. So how does town government prepare for an emergency? Is how I'm going to take this presentation. All emergencies are local. Local government is responsible for responding to the emergency. The state tells us that if it's a big emergency, don't expect to hear from them for 48 to 72 hours. So we are on our own pretty much. We have to take care of ourselves. And in the long run, if you think about it, we want to govern ourselves. We know how best to take care of our people, and we know our communities. So the select board is in charge of the response to an emergency. Of course, they're very busy people, I understand. So by state statute, we have a emergency management director and coordinator for every town. And they're responsible for developing plans and preparedness and be ready for that day when the dam breaks. So we got a couple handouts here. And I'm sorry I didn't have anything to go on screen. So one of the big things is being able to pay for a disaster. We need to document what happened. We're very fortunate that Josh Schwartz and Sam Robinson has formed for us a damage assessment team. So they can go out and assess, especially roads and stuff. So it relieves the town crew from having to do that.
They are the team? Josh and Sam?
The damage assessment team.
Oh, wow.
And in fact, they're going to be doing that for the whole valley. Because, you know, if it is a road problem and with floods, which is the primary disaster that we have is floods. Road crew is pretty busy repairing roads and stop and document that per incident, per culvert, per washout. Extra burden on them. So I'm very happy that Josh and Sam have taken on this role. In federal declared disaster, the state has to have $1 million worth of damage to the infrastructure to the state before the governor can ask the president for a declaration of emergency, which will allow FEMA to come in and start doing FEMA stuff.
So $1 million is the threshold.
Is the threshold throughout the state. And that's infrastructure. That is not individual damage. So in the end, the FEMA will pay for 75% of the damage. And they'll come around and they'll assess it too. And that leaves the state and local communities to pick up the balance. After Irene, it was noted that a lot of communities had not done due diligence to prepare for such a disaster. And the state came out with a set of guidelines that if the town would adopt these guidelines, they would pick up to 17.5% of the thing on top of that.
I remember that.
Yeah. So in order to not be on the hook for a lot of money, it behooves the towns to come up with certain documentation, implement certain procedures, so it makes us more resilient when something unfortunate happens. And it doesn't have to be floods, but that is the most common type of disasters. I mean, if we had a fuel truck spring a big leak on Bridge Street, we might have a problem. You know, a lot of things, emergencies can be very inventive and everything. So right after Irene, Jeb Spalding, who was the treasurer at the time, Secretary of Administration, came up with a list of guidelines that each town, municipality should adopt. One of them is the National Flood Insurance Program. So that's a simple one. The select board just approved a resolution adopting the standards of National Flood Insurance Program.
Did we not have that
Not,
before Irene?
I don't think so. I don't know when we adopted it. I'd have to look it up.
Oh.
But it really became a checklist item after Irene. I think it was available, but I don't know that the towns really had. Yeah. Who to participate. And I'm reading from the second page here. The other one is a town road and bridge standards, which is an annual certification that the road commissioner and the town administrator work together and get in. So at least two other documents, the local emergency operation plan and the local hazard mitigation plan. The local emergency operations plan, we just approved it. It's an annual requirement right after the town meeting. And it has to be into the state by 1 June. We just approved ours last night. Basically, I'll pass it around for, want to take a look at it. Basically, it's a list of contact informations and procedures that would guide the emergency management director and coordinator through the process. So that if we need contact information, it should be there. It also helps us brainstorm what we should be thinking about. Vulnerable populations, we don't want to forget about them. And there's a checklist of what we should be doing during an emergency. And the last one is the local hazard mitigation plan that Alice will speak to in a few minutes. And that's due every 5 years. And we just barely got ours in, a year late, this last fall. So Waitsfield's up to date on all 4 requirements.
What happens in that time frame where, let's say it expired? Like let's say you got it in 6 months late, if something happens, is there? Don't want to go there.
We don't want to go there. It behooves us to get this stuff in
Sure.
and keep it up to date. So roughly, if you look at the table at the bottom of the page, and I apologize to those folks that are zooming in, but on a hypothetical $1 million disaster to a community, if we had none of this documentation, we could be on the hook for $175,000. But with all 4 documents in place and approved, if it was $1 million, incident, we'd only be on the hook for $75,000. So it's pretty obvious. These are important documents and we need to use them. In emergency management, we have 4 phases: prepare, respond, recover, and mitigate. So we're constantly preparing. The local emergency operation plan is a way that we prepare and that we use during the response phase. The local hazard mitigation plan is an example, is mitigation factor. So from a municipal perspective, this is what we need to keep our eyes on the ball about. In the mitigation plan that Alice will go through in just a minute is a list of items, places, sore spots that we have identified that need attention. And as grants and availability of time and everything comes about, we try to check off those items. So I'll let Alice talk about the hazard, and that
So
probably,
like the vulnerable
yes,
places.
vulnerable places, and it'd be good for you folks all to be very familiar with that chart. Because as you're doing your work, if you can see where it can dovetail into something that we have identified as a problem, is a potential
Potential.
hazard, or it is a hazard that we'd like to mitigate so that we don't get slammed when something happens. If you are aware of that table, you can help us, the town, mitigate these different. So that table is like critical for us to understand and know what's on it. And Alice, would you like to?
Sure. Bob, you were at one of our meetings. The way this was formed was there's a template that comes through, and it's brand new this year, where FEMA and Vermont Emergency Management identify categories of potential disasters. So besides flooding, we also have to evaluate things like high winds, severe storms, heat issues, cold issues. We have a table in here that is given out where these mitigation, and it's called a mitigation action evaluation and prioritization. So there's fluvial erosion in here. There's inundation flooding, snow, ice, invasive species, wildfires, landslides, drought, heat, cold, thunderstorms, earthquakes. So these categories are all given to us. And we had a committee that that Fred and I put together. I remember Brian Shoup recommended getting Friends of the Mad River involved. So we had Ira and we had Luke Foley contributing to evaluating the seriousness of all these different types of disasters. We gave them like a ranking from 1 to 5 and totaled it up, et cetera, et cetera. And we did hold public meetings, advertised them quite well. Turnout for them was poor, I would say. But the other thing that happened is that CVRPC will help the towns put together their local hazard mitigation plans. And we had Keith Cubbin at CVRPC, who really is the one who actually had to go in the middle of this and take a workshop because this was an entirely new template, entirely new design, and an entirely new process. no charge to the town. So again, we had a contract that the select board approved to have Luke help us. And also keep in mind, we were working without a town administrator at the time. So people were picking up projects as a fill-in for this. But what I did find out was, I mean, this is it in paper. I have a copy of it. I have found that I couldn't find it up on the current website. I found the old one posted, but I don't see the new LHMP on the website. So I get,
Our website, I can fix that tomorrow as long as I think I have the new draft.
yeah, because you printed this out for me. And yeah, that really needs to go up there.
Thank you.
And then once it gets up there, I'll send a message around to where you can find it. So you can,
I'll upload it and I'll send you the link so you can.
yeah, send a link around because both the select board and the planning commission should be fully aware of this LHMP. Also, residents should. And it also is a document that as things happen, we can also add to it before the next 5-year timeline where it has to be renewed and redone again. It's updated every 5 years. We were way over that limit of 5 years. We were late. So at the time, Waitsfield was not, Waitsfield could not apply for that high percentage for the state additional funding. We could only apply for 7.5% funding from the state. Now that we have this in place, we're up to the 17.5 percentage again. And that's really important. But the purpose of it is really the whole process. And the plan itself is to help the town identify all natural hazards that the community might face, and then ranking them according to assessment of probabilities. And what, working with someone like Keith Cubbin, you start with a table of everything, do some ranking, and then start identifying your most critical needs right now. So when you do get to see the local hazard mitigation online, you'll see that there's a full table that's called Mitigation Action Evaluation and Prioritization. And that was a heck of a lot of work to do, but the group did get through it. And then you come to a table, which is the Mitigation Action Plan, which is where projects are put into this table. The persons or departments that are responsible for these mitigation plans and execution of them are all listed in that table, and how one might fund them is in that table also. So when you get to this plan, Table 6 Mitigation Action Plan, you'll see everything that's been identified as the potential ways to reduce our flood risk, because of course flooding was the first thing that rose to the top of the priority tables. So the big ones that we're really interested in right now as ASAP, the first one is, Fred's been talking about this one for a while, in the category of landslides, we have a potential slide near the town line between Facein and Waitsfield on Millbrook along Bragg Hill Road. And there's a potential slide there. In fact, you can, Fred has pictures and you can see it as it's progressing. I mean, basically, Facein is constantly trying to fix that section of Bragg Hill Road and adding dirt. And as you add the dirt, the layers start sinking based on, weather, just based on the traffic on the road, etc. The problem is if that goes into a full slide, the place that's going to flood is Waitsfield. So,
I
yeah,
can interrupt for just a second. Next time you go up Route 17, especially before the leaves bud out, take a look right at the town line at that side hill. It's been getting worse year after year.
Okay.
In emergency management, we never think about sunny days. Every day is a cloudy, rainy day.
Mhm.
And we look at worst case scenarios, and we look at the worst of the worst case scenario. So if that side hill absolutely gave way, we have the potential of losing the road on Bragg Hill,
mhm,
plugging the Millbrook and flooding from the town line all the way down through and taking out several houses on the way.
Yeah.
Now that's worst case scenario. Is that going to happen? Can it happen? Yes.
yeah. It's been studied before. It's in the landslide database that the state maintains. It's A&R or Department of, but it was evaluated by professors and his students at Norwich University many years ago. And
Is there a possible remedy? Sorry, Allison, I mean,
well, what's on the docket is Brian Voigt knows about it, and River Corridor. Got to remember all the names. And there's a landslide department. It's on the docket for them to come and do a site visit and
We
figure
need
out.
we need a study.
But what I'm saying right now, it's in a priority position of the mitigation actions that rose to the top of these need to be done first. Okay. So in this table, you're also going to find culverts that have been identified as critical for replacement or actually maybe just, yeah, replacement, excuse me, and upsizing. I've got 1, 2, 3, 5, 6 that are priority. You'll see them, they're all highlighted in yellow in this table.
Hey, Alice, on the upsizing, how are we basing that sizing, right? Is
Yeah.
it based on the current estimate, like on what we're currently seeing, or is it based on future modeling based on storms? And I know that FEMA, last I was aware, was not as progressive on this. So I just want to make sure we're like smart. I guess, I mean, there's a cost to being bigger, but I wouldn't want to replace a culvert and then need to replace it again in 10 years.
Right. This has all been, these culverts are actually, most of them have been on the local hazard mitigation plan since 2017.
Mhm.
And we're engineers with CVRPC and Vermont Emergency Management assessing these culverts and making these recommendations. And yet, right, in many cases, they're going to be upsized and upsized again.
Right. And I think I bring it up because I went to a FEMA meeting, I remember after Irene, and I remember them talking about the specific issue, and I don't remember what happened. So that's why I'm asking you.
And some of them are,
You know so much more about this, so thank you.
well, some are actually damaged.
Yeah.
That need to be replaced. I mean, you got some, VTrans does have a database of all the culverts in the state. And I don't know how often, I think maybe every 2 years or so, they do go out and examine culverts and rank them according to their, what condition they're in. And they have pictures with them, which are kind of funny when you see which.
Well, now we know that culverts are sized not only for the amount of water, but for wildlife.
Yep.
Yeah, well, that's slightly different from what we're talking about now. This,
Right, but when they do get updated, now we have wildlife corridors.
And aquatic passages, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
aquatic passages.
Yep.
and those were identified in our town plan, remember? And but I'm even talking about they keep databases of things that are in people's driveways.
Oh, I see, wow.
So, and then you're going to find in here it is, under inundation flooding in yellow, are the reconnect floodplain identified areas. And they are reconnect the floodplain on the town-owned Austin parcel, reconnect the floodplain on the town-owned Tardy parcel, which is now the Virginia Farley Memorial area, I think. Reconnect the floodplain on the town-owned lower fairground parcel, and study and possibly reconnect the flood chute just south of Tremblay Road on private property. Now, the flood chute did not go into the contract we have with the Winooski Basin water quality, but what was replaced, making project number 4, is Kitty Perot's property. At some point, the Winooski Basin water quality leads, and that would be Brian Voigt at CVRPC, added the LaRue swimming hole and maybe one more. But that's all I know about. So there are 4 areas that are identified in our local hazard mitigation plan. Those are the ones I'm referring to. And then there were some additions that were made by representatives of the Winooski Basin Water Quality Committee. It's like, gee, Kinney's on that committee and said, gee, while you're there, could I add my property? But Kinney's property is not in our LHMP. So we've got the slopes, we've got the floodplain reconnections in here that were identified, and we have the culverts that were identified. And there are more things like ice, protect power lines and roads by inspecting and removing hazardous trees in the right of way. So there's many, many more potential projects here that would be good for hazard mitigation. But the ones I just cited that are highlighted in yellow are the ones that rise to the top as really needing to be done now, that this would make a significant difference in flooding. There's also, Fred's always asking his emergency management folks and select board members to be familiar with incident command system training that FEMA conducts. And the other one that's in highlight here, which I think the town is working on, if I'm correct, getting a backup generator at the town garage.
Okay.
Presently, they don't have a generator, so they can't fuel their trucks,
Oh, my goodness.
So we had the same thing with the school many years ago. The school was our Red Cross, an emergency shelter. But if it lost power, it couldn't function. So we had it on the HLMP. Grants opened up. We could justify applying for the grant because it's on the HLMP, and we got a significant amount of money to buy the generator for the school.
So we can do the same for the town garage.
Portions of it, yeah. Get the
Yeah.
generator. So, yeah, but that's one way where you can leverage getting grant money by leveraging the LHNP.
Also, I'm gonna put big caveat in here because I've been in many meetings since last week on the funding scene with the current federal landscape and what's going on with Muskrat and Trump. They've already said FEMA comes under Health and Human Services, one of them, and the director of that has already announced that they plan to cut FEMA. FEMA's going to go bye-bye. And the states are going to be more responsible for their own disaster mitigation and disaster recovery monies. Planning Commission really should recommend to the select board, and it can go into the LHMP, that many towns at town meeting have the foresight to start a reserve fund just for that purpose, for funding disasters that occur in the town. Might not start with significant money, but they're starting with funding, with a reserve fund within the town budgets. And the states need to look at it. So we need to keep our ear to the ground about what's going on with FEMA.
Put this in a little bit of perspective. During Irene, the town took out a loan for our portion that we had to contribute. And that loan is still active. We're still paying it off, and will be for a few years hence. And Irene was in 2011. So yeah.
But, once JB sends you the link, it's a very good document. The bulk of this document was put together by Keith Cubbin at CVRPC. Like I said, he took the workshop with other staff like him from RPCs around the state to learn. This is a whole new process and template. And it took over a year to get this done.
Thank you both for your work. Thank you, Alice.
And it is a living document. We can update it anytime. We see a hazard, we see something that's concerning to us, we can add it to the list. And in fact, I would rather work that way rather than wait every 5 years and then sit around this table and try to brainstorm. So in your travels, if you see something that needs to be mitigated, you can put it on the list. If grant monies come available. If not, maybe it's a small thing that our people can just take care of. But if we can identify these things, get them on the list, then we can start working and checking that items off that list. And
do you know how ice jams are people, how predictions on ice jams and ice jams are done in the state? They're done on many of the main rivers by National Weather Service personnel. Here in Waitsfield, they count on observers like us. If you see something happening, alert the town and alert National Weather Service right away.
Subject to your questions.
Well, what Alice just said is the wave of the future. That, really it's going to be more up to us individuals, one by one, to report things like what Alice was saying, if we see an ice jam or anything that looks out of the norm. But I think one of the main things that I learned from this is we have the select board. And I think that it's really critical for the select board to let all of us citizens know that if there's an emergency, here's our number. You know, and there's a peace of mind in that.
Well, we do have a plan. Something happens, we can put the plan in. One of the way, that's a great lead in. Thank you. Appreciate that. There's something I was going to plug was Vermont Alert.
Oh, yeah, because, you know, I did see that and I, at the town meeting, you passed those out. And so I've got that on my phone for sure.
And if you aren't familiar with it, this is how Alice, myself, Claire Ireland, who was the other EMC, will be communicating in real time to the townspeople. So if we want to let you know that Bridge Street is flooding or about to flood, or we've issued an evacuation order, this is how it's going to get out.
Claire lives in town?
Excuse me?
Claire Ireland.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know her, yeah.
Relatively new, lives in Reggie and Kathy Orr's old house
Oh, okay.
up above the pond there. Yeah. So Claire and I have taken the course. We can get online and we can put out a message to everybody in Waitsfield who has signed up for Vermont Alert.
That's the key.
That's the key. Otherwise, it may be 12 hours before Front Porch Forum comes out. We can put
Right,
things
right,
on
right.
Facebook.
Right.
We have our own Facebook here at the town. Valerie Porter's very good about putting stuff out on their Facebook and other social media. But there's time lag and a lot of people aren't subscribed.
Would it might be worthwhile to maybe just create, I could do it this week, a news post or just something on the website that reflects, hey, go here to sign up for,
Yeah.
Oh, that would be
Yeah.
great.
especially as we approach the.
Yes, absolutely.
That's how I got on there. So it works.
And
Yeah.
also, you know, drought information, believe it or not, that's an issue right now, perhaps. And the fire warden, there's a daily fire alert.
VT alert.
We'll keep this and
You keep it.
hang it downstairs somewhere.
Yes, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how we're gonna let people know in real time what's happening and what to do or whatever.
Hey, Fred, I have a question for you. Kind of back to Emery's kind of point about this is our future and things are really changing. Do we have all the skills that you foresee that we need in our community or people identified for dealing with this? I'm just wondering if we want more outreach to more families and members, residents, you know, to say, hey, do we have somebody else who's, I don't know what the skill is, but I'm just thinking about that. Some of this is pretty common knowledge for some groups of people who've moved into town and maybe they can help out.
That's a very good point. The emergency, local emergency operation plan, the one that we do annually, the one we just finished, does indicate where there are vacancies.
Animal control.
And yeah, the Rotary I'm working with the Rotary and they're coming up with a bunch of volunteers to fill some of those gaps. They're an emergency. We have a lot of people that spontaneously want to volunteer to help. And we've never had a way of organizing them for their safety and for accountability on our part. So the Rotary's taking over that segment, is forming a nucleus of individuals who can become active during an emergency to organize spontaneous volunteers to muck out or whatever the task is. It's important in that more people get hurt during the recovery phase than during the actual disaster itself. So this is important to me. They're going to be filling one of my critical vacancies, and that's the shelter management with the school, the Waitsfield Elementary School, which is probably going to be used for any incident in the whole valley. We don't have a shelter manager to take the Red Cross course. We've got the beds, we got the blankets and everything.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
I saw you had diapers,
I get diapers.
hundreds and hundreds of diapers.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I learned that from Irene. Middle of the night, we had a lady show up with 4 kids, 3 in diapers, and she didn't have any diapers. So I'm trying to find diapers in the middle of a rainstorm. And I'm probably about the last person who should go out and try to figure that one out. So, yeah, we got a stockpile of diapers. Anyway.
But you didn't have the diapers before Irene.
Mhm.
Wow. So now you know how important that is.
Where do you keep all this stuff?
I have a shed down to the fly-in Mad River Industrial Park.
Okay,
I got a shed down there. So
somewhere
yeah, I
that's
get,
accessible.
yeah, and I make this available for the whole valley. 25 beds.
Fred's been doing
But
some-
anyway, we do have vacancies. I'm looking for someone that can run a pet shelter. Because if you stand up a Red Cross emergency shelter, you need to be able to take care of animals, because we've learned from Katrina that people will not evacuate their homes if they can't take their pets with them. Well, the Red Cross won't allow pets inside the shelter, so you have to set up a shelter next to it.
Great.
Crates, I got crates. I've been working with DART, disaster animal response teams.
Hmm.
And in the shed over there, I've got half a dozen crates of different sizes and dog bowls and
Wow.
all that. But I don't have anybody to manage that. Ed Reed has allowed us to use his facility if we have to stand up the shelter. So works great. The animal shelter is right across from the Red Cross shelter, and so forth.
Fred's
So
been-
yeah, we
Yeah.
do have vacancies.
Yeah. Fred's been doing some incredible work, updating things and organizing this and working with the Rotary and identifying enhancements to the emergency programs that he has.
Something that I hope to form, I've talked with the other EMDs in the other 3 towns, and that is to come up with an Office of Emergency Management for the Mad River Valley.
Oh,
Rather than having 4 individual
yes, yes, yes.
entities that are really repeating the same thing over and over again. As an example, I've got the beds. The other 3 towns don't. I can set up a Red Cross shelter for the whole valley, or for any one town. Other towns could bring other resources to the table. And moreover, be able to manage a disaster in a unified way, rather than 4 individual towns trying to fight through, setting up distribution points and stuff.
What did you
Working
call it?
together.
Office of Emergency?
Management. So that's something we're working on right now. It's already sort of taken place with the Rotary picking up the responsibility or the task of organizing spontaneous volunteers. Just so that you all know, if that happened, if we did have to do that, the volunteers would be organized out of the Masonic Lodge. And that's probably, unless another EMD has a different concept, that would be whether the disaster was in Facein or Warren or Moretown.
That's where it was in Irene.
That's where it was Irene, and it was.
And it
Boy,
worked
that-
really, really well.
Yep, so it worked so good. So that's the SOP. So yeah,
Hey,
we're
Fred-
trying to work towards a whole valley-wide response.
Fred, this sounds so great. Thank you for everything you're doing to make it, make us prepared, because if somebody's not thinking about the what if, nobody does. I'm curious if Vermont has a command center during a statewide emergency. I know that in other states they do, and I just didn't know how Vermont sets it up at that level. And then how we as a valley kind of work with that command center. I assume that you are the point person, but I just don't want to make assumptions on information.
No, that's most excellent. Vermont has Vermont Emergency Management. They're located in Waterbury, second floor,
Oh.
at the southern entrance to the complex over there. Part of public safety. So they're in there with the state police, fire marshal.
Department of Public Safety.
Yep, yeah. Work very closely with them. If there was an emergency, as an example, if we were short a certain type of resource, I would, hopefully I would start seeing people would be reporting to me, the different departments will be reporting to me. If they're getting short or near, they can see that they're going to run out of a resource of some type. They come to the Emergency Operations Center, which is right. This is it. This is the Emergency Operations Center for the town. We'd be set this up and this be staffed. We'd take the request in and I'd bump it up to Vermont Emergency Management. And they would try to fill that request for us.
And they make decisions too, as things happen and storms are forecast, flooding is forecast. They make decisions on where they deploy the swift water rescue teams.
I can request them if we have an incident where people are stranded. I can get this.
Yep.
Calling in Vermont Emergency Management. They have a huge EOC over there with 3-4 big screens. One is tuned into just FEMA, where they can have teleconferencing with FEMA people. And they can get updates on what's happening and what we need and all. And at the state EOC, they've got all the key department heads. They've got V-Trans, they got the Red Cross, they got the National Guard. All the key players have a chair there, have a desk there, and they all get to see the ticket. If I want to request something, I'll call Vermont Emergency Management and they fill out a ticket. And this ticket is displayed on the screen. So everybody can see that Waitsfield needs something. And then whoever can fill it, and they can manage it that way. So yeah, it's a very elaborate place they have over there for, by Vermont standards anyway, for an EOC. So, yeah. Did I answer your question or did I go astray?
You totally did. There is a command center of sorts. Sounds a little different than the ones I'm used to, which have like the coastal program shows up at a bunker, which is where the governor of Massachusetts always reports from during the storm. You know, it sounds a little bit more elaborate, but it's the same idea. It's just good to know that Vermont has it, and that most importantly that you're keyed into it, especially since we're just in this pull yourself up by the bootstraps world now, and we can't do it alone. So at least I just wanted to know that what support do we have, or do we need to, or do we need to be more robust because we don't have that, right? That's the kind of the delta.
I have a wonderful working relationship with Vermont Emergency Management. Yeah, I know who to talk to for whatever, usually.
Awesome. I'm surprised it's in a Waterbury building though, where it could get flooded. You think
Well, that's what happened during Irene.
Yeah, Irene.
Yeah, they were.
I mean, in Massachusetts, it's literally underground. It's a bunker. I've had friends who've spent the night there during storm.
Well, the Vermont Emergency Management was set up in the tunnel warrens underneath the old complex. And when Irene came, the Newski went up and flooded all those tunnels.
All the emergency tunnels.
All of Vermont Emergency Management. I didn't hear a thing from Emergency Management for almost a week.
They set up in the Best Western in Waterbury, that's up on Blush Hill. That's where they moved to.
Yeah, and then they moved down to Camp Johnson in Winooski, which is their alternate EOC down there. But during Irene, I didn't hear anything from the state for a week. So that's why it's really important for us to be as autonomous as possible. Don't expect cavalry come riding in to rescue you.
Calvary.
It ain't gonna happen. It ain't gonna happen. But, talk about ELCs, we've got 3 actually. This is our primary. Mervis has a very nice ELC over there. They got 16 telephone lines coming in there. Mervis.
What's Mervis?
The ambulance.
Oh,
Valley
I just
Ambulance
hadn't
Society.
heard of it called that way, Mervis.
So this is our primary. Mervis is the secondary. But what we've been doing the last year or two is having a virtual EOC where Alice and Claire and myself and the other EMDs in the town, in the valley, work off from emails, text messages, Zoom conference. I have my own Zoom account, so I can set up a Zoom meeting for everybody. And that has worked really well. Really well. Because everybody can be in their own location with all their own supplies and everything and coordinate from there. So I think we're one of the first communities in the state that is doing a virtual EOC. It's been so far very successful. But if we had a Irene size event, we would start populating this area here for daily meetings and briefs and stuff. Yeah. So I don't mean to take up all your meeting.
Very helpful,
Mhm.
very important.
That's great. Thank you.
Jonathan, could I raise a subject briefly while Fred is here? I noticed in the notes this comment about open meeting law for board members and committee. And this VLCT training, or I guess it's a video of some sort. Is there anything coming down towards us, like the planning commission, whatever, relative to that training?
I'm not following. What is the training?
Do you happen to know,
What? Open meeting law for boards and committee?
I know you guys go through training.
Yeah, we haven't yet, but we have to. We get till September.
And what I read is the scope of that has become broader to include. Is this true?
Maybe, go ahead, keep going, I'm trying.
It's in your notes.
Contact the Secretary of State's office.
Yeah, I can find out.
They set up training.
This is the thing now and halfway through April. That's really the reason I asked the question.
Yeah, it's on April
But
16th.
this business of whether it qualifies for the training that we're required to have
I see.
versus it's just a VLC thing that's being run again for the world. Don't know, but I know the select board was supposed to have done this a year ago or something.
I see, you mean in the staff report, yeah, okay.
Well, the training that we have to accomplish, I understood that we need to have it done by September.
Yesterday,
Uh,
last year. You were, but you didn't have the organization to deal with it.
Yeah. But that now is a,
So you haven't heard anything. I
No.
was gonna ask that question last night and I wasn't on board.
no. No, I don't know. I know we have to take the training. I don't know if committees and boards.
Yeah, it says that every municipal board, but it's the chair. So, so Jonathan, if you can't make it, then I have to do it. So let me know. Oh, I mean, I'd be happy to.
Give York a call, let him research.
Yeah,
Okay.
Maybe I should just go anyway. Oh, yeah, I have to, because I'm the chair of the commission of the Waitsfield House.
Well, I mean, it says,
Municipal-
every municipal board, council, commission, and committees, is required to comply with Vermont's open meeting law.
Yeah,
Not necessarily
to attend.
to attend, yes. Although I think it's a great primer on,
I've seen language other than that.
oh, I see, okay.
You know, I think it says that they want the chair of all of these. That's what I read.
York tree, track that.
Okay.
Yeah. Chairs of legislative bodies, municipal managers, and mayors are required.
Hmm.
It will address the basics of Act 133. It does not fulfill its training requirements.
Yeah, there's a separate state required training that you can access online, but I don't know. It's not clear exactly who's covered by it on its face. I have to
I know there's
Closer.
an ethics course that we have to do.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay,
good.
Thank you, Fred.
Yeah, thank you.
Nearby, if you ever need anything, let me know. Thank you, Alice.
Hey, no problem, Fred.
thank you so
Thanks,
much,
Fred.
Fred. Thank you so much.
Right. So our next item of business is just sort of debriefing on the village master planning meeting that occurred now 2 weeks ago. So I know I saw many folks there. And I guess, welcome any input that people have from their experience there, from talking to other folks at the meeting, sort of coming out of that, looking at the dot maps that we have seen from that. I don't believe we had a chance to circle up with the consultants yet following that meeting, but we do have the photos in the packet that show the dot maps. My initial immediate, oh, go ahead.
We did have a steering committee.
Oh,
after
okay.
After the open hearth, so we did have an opportunity to debrief on what happened.
Okay, so I just missed it because,
Oh, that's right, you weren't there.
yeah, makes sense. This has been a challenging couple of weeks on my end. So yeah, Anne-Marie, why don't you go ahead and yeah,
Okay.
lead on that.
Well, first of all, I'm happy to say that a little over 60 people signed up. But between 70 and 80 people arrived. So we're on par with about the same amount of people that came to the modernization open house.
Mhm.
So generally speaking, we were very happy with not only the quantity, I would say, but the quality of people in terms of their questions, their interest. And to make a long story super short, the main thing I got out of it was that the majority of the people that were there, I'm not saying the majority of people, I'm just saying the majority of people that were there voted for the big enchilada. They wanted phase 3 full build out was the main people, the main thing that people were voting for. More people voted for a 3-story building that had a pitched roof rather than a 3-story building that had a flat roof. People weren't really gung-ho about that, but there were still people that said it was okay to do that. But I would say that the majority of people voted for 3 floors, first floor commercial, and 2 floors residential. Now, the concern with that from some people that I spoke to was, well, but then what about housing for the elderly? Because you can't have the elderly if they have to walk upstairs. And so I was saying that it all depends on the developer, but if there's a 3-story building that has entrances to units on the 3rd floor, elevator is required. But a part of the presentation was to have a mixture, so there would be also units that would be on the ground level, units on the 2nd level. There is a variety of opportunities. And then later, speaking with Alice, she mentioned that our goal with the master plan has been to identify at least 70 units in Irisville. Why? Because the 70 units is what is going to be capable with the new waste treatment, the wastewater project. But we, in fact, may not need to have full 70 build out. But it's been our plan all along is let's plan for 70 units and we'll just be happy for whatever we can get. I mean, it's probably highly unlikely that we'll be able to get developers to come in and do the whole 70 unit, but let's start with dream big. So the number one takeaway is that I was very, very encouraged about is that the town is ready. They want this. They loved it. It was great.
There's been some discussion in the last week in our wastewater meetings. Maybe talking to Alex about dialing down that number of 70, because that's kind of what we've set aside allocated for potential residential growth. And probably should have addressed this earlier. I think we need to change the language a little bit. Maybe it's up to 70, maybe it's 50, because in reality that, some of those, some of the locations for the residential growth is in the village here. I mean, think about,
Yes.
What Ed Reed wants to do, potentially with his property, once the system's in. So we're going to come up with a way to kind of dial that back to make sure the two mesh.
Right.
I think this is something that has come up recently. I think we'll discuss more about that tomorrow at our engineering meeting. But yes, the long-term goal is try to get 70 in town.
Right, but
not necessarily all in Irisville.
not necessarily on Irisville.
But the
So
point is
moving forward, that's my point,
Yeah.
is that from the steering committee's perspective, moving forward, we won't be pushing the envelope of 70 and scaling more down for 50 or something like that.
Even if we set up to 70, the goal is, the
Yeah.
goal is housing.
Well, all I was saying to Anne Marie the other night was the Regional Planning Commission is now embroiled like up to our necks. And I was going to describe this at the end of the meeting. We're working on the future land use plan for Washington County and part of Orange County. And, municipalities, towns all have their land use plans. It's part of, remember we worked on it for the town plan? So now there will be a regional a future land use plan. And there are procedures that have been set that we need to follow to develop this map and define areas for growth and anyhow. So one of the things that will be happening as we go through this is the CVRPC housing group staff and the Regional Planning Commission will be looking at recommended and distributed housing number targets for all of the municipalities in the region. And from the first cut that I looked at, Waitsfield would be assigned, would be recommended for something like 50. So it might be a lower number. But we're just starting this process, but we'll have housing numbers for you, which is why you've got the notification about the survey that's come out. It's important to do the survey because that will drive information for us for the regional plan. And also CVRPC staff, and probably, again, me, will be coming around to select boards and planning commissions to solicit information that will be used in the development of the full future land use plan. So looking for some significant input from all of the municipalities.
Yeah.
This is the headache. This is a this is huge project. We're calling it the thing stuck in the cobra's neck, trying to move this forward.
The land use plan thing?
Yeah, it's a doozy.
Yeah. Well, I have 5 takeaways that I wrote down from my notes from the steering committee meeting. And that's the primary comments, questions that we received were, okay, so how do we implement this? We love your plan, but now what? The next one was they wanted the stadium to be more integrated.
Or what?
Integrated. They wanted
Stadium itself or the parcel? Yeah, that's a good question.
That's a good question.
Because I think
was
even the
assuming
stadium board,
parcel.
I'm thinking the parcel, yes.
I was assuming
And
the
then
parcel, not the
There
stadium.
took on a lot of discussion actually all afternoon. There's about the potential for a field house, people ready to build it, the types of construction that can be done, so.
Yeah, I'm
that
almost,
for another
it's
time,
the
yeah. Yeah,
parcel.
parcel, I think so, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, the next one, sorry. There was a skepticism on the balance we achieved with wetlands. They were super excited for going with the whole enchilada. So the overall takeaway from Alex was the community was very enthusiastic and excited with the concern for wetlands.
Good. Sounds like we have a smart community.
So the discussions with the community included traffic calming strategies. They wanted more traffic calming strategies and more clarification. They wanted it to be more, make it more clear about the pedestrian versus biking versus, baby carriages, etc. They wanted to balance that with on-street parking. And another takeaway was people wanted mixed-use development. And the other big major takeaway was nothing was a real red flag. Except for maybe the wetland concerns. But as far as Alex, when he tallied up all the comments and everything that we heard of, there really wasn't a standout red flag.
I do have
Is
to
that-
tell you,
Is that is that a download from the subcommittee or a download from SE Group?
What do you mean? What I just said?
Yes, that list.
This list was from SE Group and the subcommittee. The first one, I think, my first 5 was from SE Group, and the rest was all from the whole subcommittee.
I did get 1 or 2 comments that people that commented to me was they didn't like the 3-story, the look of the 3-story buildings.
Well, like I said, there were people that were not thrilled about the flat roof one.
Yeah, they didn't like it was just, they felt it
Yeah.
was, you know, they didn't
But-
like 3-story building. That's all they said. They thought it was ugly. You know, I didn't get into the conversation because I was busy at the time.
Yeah.
Oh, but that's why it was so important to show a building that had flat roof.
We also, opposition, we codified that in our bylaw amendments,
Codified 3 stories,
3-story buildings.
Yeah.
So I think,
but we didn't codify whether it be flat roof or.
no.
And then the feedback from the steering committee was to SE Group for this presentation was, don't show brick buildings.
Yeah. Was a no.
That's a no-no. Just, if you're gonna do Italianate looking flat story buildings, that's fine because Italianate is historic looking. It still can be historic looking if it's clapboards.
So back to the planning process and the discussion about ladder trucks.
Oh, yeah.
What is the break point there? Do we actually know?
3, yeah, so, that's in when we were doing the bylaw amendments, that was the question is, so the way the Home Act is if you have, I think it's 50% affordable in a building, affordable housing, it meets the criteria, then the developer can do with 4th floors, that's where we were.
The developer can take 1 floor higher
One floor
than
higher.
what the municipality
Yeah.
has in their zoning.
Which in this case
Bylaws.
would be
So what does that mean to a fire truck?
It means it would present a sticky
It
situation.
would be a sticky situation if we had
left
4
it that
stories.
way.
Yep,
So 3 stories is a ladder truck.
Yeah,
the 4th would be an issue, yeah.
4th would be the,
I think the nearest one with a 4th-story ladder would be Waterbury.
Well, like it or not, that'll become a subject of conversation.
Yeah, and rightfully so, yeah. Mhm.
Pretty sure Warren's reaches the 4th story.
We had, Emma would know, didn't Emma answer this question for us?
Yeah, I feel like I've answered this a
Jared?
couple times, but somehow I don't quite remember. I'm pretty sure that Warren's reaches the 4th story because
Okay,
Claybrook and
okay.
all the condos. It would have
Yeah,
to.
cool, of course, yeah. Problem solved. No, of course that's true. Thank you, Emma.
so there are fire trucks in Warren that can reach 4 stories.
Apparently, yeah. and then
Truck
that-
singular, but yes.
Sure.
Oh,
Yeah,
truck
yeah.
singular. There is a truck singular.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's, yeah. Well, I just remember back when we were going over the bylaws, whether we go 3-story or 4-story. And we all settled on 3-story because if we did pick 4-story, then a developer could legally come in and make a 5-story.
Mhm.
And we thought that would be a bit much. But that law came in just as we were finishing up.
Yeah.
Because we did have 4 stories in there
We tweaked it back, yeah.
and then we took it back, yeah. Okay, let's see if there's anything else. Oh, there were some concerns about Route 100. In terms of speed. Um, and Mac Rude is on the board of the Mad River Path. And so we have him to be able to coordinate, make sure whatever it is that we do with our master planning, it is going to be coordinated with the what are we calling it?
Active
The active,
transportation corridor.
the active
Active transportation.
transportation corridor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so there you go. See on the screen right there? So we brought those 4 photos. That was a
I think-
board.
The Zoom is not seeing the,
What are you seeing?
we're just seeing the browser tabs.
Oh, really?
Yeah, something got messed up on the share.
Share.
Because it was working for like a minute at the beginning and then it seems to have dropped off, but then we weren't referencing it.
Yeah.
So.
Yes, no?
It's still loading.
Oh,
Yep, that's it. Yep.
It's in the packet, so, yeah.
okay,
it.
great. So here it is, using the sticker dot. And then if you can look at the site plan underneath the photo of the building, you'll see how there's this yellow dash line. So SE Group was making suggestions that, oh, this is the kind of building that can go here. And this is the kind of building that can go here. And, you know, look, over here, this is what we can have over here. So it was really very, very well done, I thought. And my vote is to have all of them, because I think that, you know, variety and diversity is the essence of vitality.
Yeah, there was definitely, I think if, JB, if you scroll down further on that, I think there's actually a picture with the dots and there was definitely a lack of support for the furthest left version of that. Or at least they didn't want to encourage it. There was support for allowing it, but it was not one that the community wanted to particularly encourage.
Yeah, it had less dots, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And had the most dots in restricting it, which, you know, I'm not sure how we would go about doing that, but it's, yeah. Oh, there it is, yeah.
There you go.
And Henry, I think to your point earlier, you can really see the huge amount of support for the next one to the right, which is the peaked roof version of the same thing.
Yeah.
Maybe a little smaller footprint. Yeah, almost no one wanted to restrict that. I see one dot there.
Yep.
I think that's fairly
So
telling.
that's very, very optimistic that, you know, people are, you know, that they are saying, okay, 3-story, but let's put a pitched roof on there.
Yeah.
They're in Burlington on the left.
Yeah,
Nothing.
South Burlington, that kind of thing, yeah.
So Becca got kicked out of the Zoom and just sent a note quickly, one of which was the same thing about, you know, people in discussing it seemed very concerned about how the buildings would look and whether they would have the same kind of charm that we expect in Vermont. The other thing, though, I think worth flagging is that there's a lot of interest in senior housing.
Yes.
And then also a lot of concern around it about, you know, how much senior housing is needed, what type of, you know, community, you know, I don't know what the right word is, but what types of senior living communities would be encouraged or, you know, would be interested in moving in there. you know, and then sort of the question of balance of, you know, if we're looking at a max of 70 new units, what's the mix that we're aiming for in terms of the types of construction? Or, you know, I'm assuming that no one in town really wants to build a 70 unit senior living facility to take up all of the capacity. But similarly, I think people want to see a mix of opportunities, and yeah, so that, I mean, that certainly was the sense that I was getting from discussions as well, but wanted to flag that. And I don't actually know if that was in the on the easels or not, that sort of that granularity of question.
And so then according to the steering committee, there's going to be a follow-up survey for the community from the open house. But this will be later in our process and that down the road, and that there won't be any more open houses because of the budget.
Well, I mean, personally, I'm very happy with the outcome, even if all we learn from this entire project is that there is the people who are engaged enough to come and participate are strongly in favor of the densest version of what we're proposing.
Exactly.
I think that's an incredibly useful thing to have learned for our purposes, for the town's purposes, for purposes of, you know, seeking all of the funding and work required to make wastewater happen. You know, it's just another clear indication that the community is behind this type of activity and this type of development in a way that hasn't been necessarily the case historically. And I think that I don't know, my read on the wetlands piece of this is that they're right. I mean, there are concerns, and that's a large reason why we want to do this. And maybe one of the biggest reasons to do this is that it gives us the best chance of presenting a unified plan for development that can help us to deal with the wetlands management piece of it, as opposed to leaving it up to individual property owners to try and navigate, which is basically impossible. So
Yeah, and there's some potential moving parts that have occurred in the last week. Won't divulge an open meeting, but I think there's a really good opportunity to rehab and restore a parcel in Irisville that is basically undevelopable to offset any potential impacts to the lower functioning wetlands should we go forward with some of those bigger expanded hub option. So I think there's some movement going on that kind of with this, and because of this, I also, one thing SE Group's going to be giving us in the end is some recommendations, some incentives. We're going to be talking. They're going to recommend potential TIF district and as well as an LOT, which is all something that I'm working on with Josh and York. I think to present to the select board at a time to be determined. But that'll be good to have those kind of recommendations come out as a part of this master planning process, because as we saw in St. Albans, you know, this
An LOT for
likely
what?
will go nowhere without some sort of push by the town to really be active in this. Well, I'm talking about it, not a valley-wide LOT. I'm talking about like for a specific project only within Waitsfield. You know, it could be a community center. St. Albans did it for their pool and recreation, like playground. But it was the first thing that the town really took charge of and brought to the voters an LOT for this project. And that really set in motion a parade of other public-private partnerships to rehab vacant buildings or vacant properties, and to, you know, including the park that's there now. So a lot of interesting things. And I think, as I said last time, I think there'll be a time where Josh and myself and maybe York will come to the planning commission to also discuss, you know, it might be a time once this master planning is over, it might be sooner, but just to talk about what we learned in St. Albans and similar techniques that can be used to here in Waitsfield to bring some of this to fruition. The main thing being a TIF district.
Just keep in mind the new wetlands mapping is coming out, and I've seen drafts, and you know what you might be looking at is underperforming wetlands, or there's wetlands now there that are being categorized as categories of restoration wetlands. So wetland identified as needing restoration. So I don't know the full details, but I think it would have similar A&R permitting issues as completely identified wetlands. Or
And then
map.
there's a Beaver House.
And then there's the beavers. The beaver that's been clogging up across from Tremblay Road too. And if you know, they're usually the water pools in that field.
Oh, is that?
And it's a beaver that's put a dam in the culvert. It's dammed up the culvert.
Oh.
So that's why that water, I mean, yeah. So they're active and not just in Harrisville.
Like I said, many beavers were shot or hit with shovels, gave their lives for building.
But they're still here,
Yeah,
long after.
long after, right? Yeah. You only beat them back so long.
When is the next select board, subcommittee meeting?
We don't have a subcommittee meeting, steering committee meeting.
Steering committee, April 22nd.
It's yeah, so that's another thing. We're gonna change, I think. We talked about it briefly, about changing the dates of the steering committee meetings to give the planning commission time to not just, to give time to review anything that's come up or material. So instead of the third Tuesday of the month, it's gonna be the fourth. And so it'll be the 22nd, yes.
Great. Okay. Go to that too.
10:30 to 12.
Yep.
Fourth Tuesdays.
Fourth through Tuesday?
Fourth Tuesdays,
Fourth Tuesday.
10:30 to
Fourth
12.
Tuesday, yeah. So, if I can have maybe just 2 more minutes, just to announce next steps.
Sorry, I cut you off. Didn't I?
Oh, no. Okay, so, in the spring, they're going to focus on strategies for implementation. June, they're going to have tools to, come up with tools and create a planning document that will include investigation of regulatory land use regulations. And then there'll be a scheduling with the infrastructure piece based on the wastewater project, which that's just guessing, you know, is the best that they can do, right? And then they're going to evaluate the tools of using a TIF or a lot. They're going to also list wetland strategies. And they're going to reflect the Mad River Path project to make sure that they are incorporating the village connections and, you know, it's not just village to village. It's what's going to happen when it gets into Irisville. So they're going to coordinate that. And they're going to post these next steps that I just told you on the website.
Great.
The SE groups. I'm done. That's it.
Thank you. That's great. That's really, really helpful. And thank you to everyone who came out to that event and helped out. I think we know it was really successful, great turnout, and I think keeps us moving in the right direction. And I think also, I mean, I don't know, personally unsolicited, but gives us even more of a reason to keep going with this project. You know, we'll get the result of this grant, but there is the opportunity to apply for a second grant. I think we should think seriously about doing that now that we've got more information and clearly have the support of the community behind us. And we can probably identify some pretty clear objectives for that second phase. All right. Any other questions before we move on to our next item? I know we're running low on time, so I don't want to. All right, our next item here is wastewater planning project update. I would like to get a little bit of this. I know we've got other things to talk about after, but JB or Bob, if you could give us a quick update on where things stand. I know there's been a lot of frustration on the funding stack side, but I don't know if there's any new news.
Funding yeah, it's a full bore right now. We are in the midst of putting together an application. We already did the pre-application for the Vermont Community Development Program block grant. It's geared towards really, environmental, basically, prevention during flooding and what have you. We kind of fit right in there with trying to get out the individual septic systems from the flood area and floodway, river corridor, et cetera. So it's looking good for that. It's a heavy lift. Pre-application was done a few weeks ago. There's an environmental review that's going on now, and then the full application will be submitted by the end of the week. The other big one is Northern Borders Regional Commission Catalyst Grant. We did a pre-application for that, and we found out yesterday that we are invited to do a final application for that, which is a massive lift itself. Took Josh, myself, and Randy at the time about 3 days up here in this room to put that together last year. And that's going to be due in a few weeks as well. So that's $1 million each for the Northern Borders because we were the second highest ranking. That they use a scoring criteria, and part of the score is your ranking on the regional project priority list. And we were number 2, which I mentioned before. The number 1 for Central Vermont is not requesting money, just recognition. So that puts us in good stead. I think that's, X amount of points on top of whatever else we score. Currently navigating USDA. They might be able to fill some gaps. I'll just leave it that way without going too far into it. We are still awaiting to hear about Greensboro's money. We went to the webinar a couple months ago. Greensboro project is not going to meet its deadlines. It was allocated $3 million from clean water. Last we heard, that was going to be split between us and the only other project, the only project that is above us, so to speak, on the totem pole, and that is the town of Montgomery, which presents interesting, a lot of, but tonight. So basically, long story short, Montgomery was pushing ahead with their project. There's a couple months where there was no messaging, and a vacuum was allowed to form, which is kind of something that Josh has been afraid of the whole time. So we've been really, pressing to keep the message out there, keep it moving, and we have done well at that. Montgomery lapsed a little bit. It allowed a couple residents to kind of come in and plant their feet and put up some signs for this and that. And now they are in some trouble as far as their project. Forgive me if I've looked at my phone a few times tonight because they had an election today. The polls closed at 7, and on that special election ballot was a measure to basically the way their planning was set up was residents of the town along the service area had to was mandatory connections. And now on the ballot is that, so that's a part of their whole funding stack. Paying back the user fees and all that as a mandatory connection. It's a question we have avoided here in Waitsfield because we have enough priority parcels and people wanting to hop on when it goes online. So the result of this information vacuum and was really just one. If I recall, it was a second homeowner who happened to be a lawyer. And anyway, so there was enough time where they got some footing, and so on the ballot tonight is a measure that would remove the mandatory connection requirement, which would undermine their funding and bring the project to a halt.
Oh, my goodness.
Which is terrible for Montgomery.
It is.
Bad for them. Could be.
I'm not going to take it any further, but you can fill in the per discussions with yes, this, so we'll find out.
JB, Vermont Community Block Grant Program? It's a HUD program, right?
Yes, yep.
Mhm.
Yeah, we had, I participated an evening webinar. It was actually very interesting. Was it last week? It might have been the week before. A lot of information, packed room. It's a really, really interesting program. We remain pretty confident, that we can get some money from that. So that's the long and short of it on funding. I think design is chugging along.
Well, we're ticking off the details, fine details of
Yes.
a number of issues,
Mhm.
and they're not holding up anything.
Yeah, yeah. It's basically, yeah,
Good.
It's just chasing the money
chasing the money.
causes a certain different perspectives.
It does, and yeah, and so, yeah, we'll see, we'll see what happens tonight. All I know is I got Lisa Loomis on the line checking for the voting results from Montgomery.
Oh, she's there now?
No, I had her keep an eye on it, because I have no idea how to get official election results from a town of less than 500 people, but, I mean, you can.
But we'll find out tomorrow.
We'll find out tomorrow. So, we'll kind of put a pin in what we see in the aftermath of that vote. But any sort of, the idea is that any money that's been promised from clean water would go to the next in line. So could be a game changer. We'll see. Anyway, but with the 2 grants, some money from Greensboro, I mean, that's looking good. That's probably about 3.5, 4 million right there. So, we're plowing ahead, and Josh Schwartz is just amazing at all he's doing. He's really spearheading both the VCDP grant and the Catalyst grant. York and I are filling in where we can. He's just doing an amazing job. And so official thanks.
That's fantastic. Yeah, great news. I mean, fingers crossed. That's really where all of this hinges on. So keep pushing.
Actually, there's
for
no
the news
CDS
tomorrow morning.
coming our way. Yeah.
Yeah,
No CDS coming our way, so we got to bank on other things.
No CDS. The Doge can get a $500 million building for free, but we can't get our CDS. So there we go. The congressionally designated spending,
So that
or
went,
congressionally directed spending.
those went out in the bill that kept the government running open.
Yes.
Yeah, I saw that right away. Hey,
Not ideal.
I just have a couple of things that we need to be aware of. Found out at project review committee meeting that the substation upgrade in Irisville, which is in a wetland, it's like right off of Carroll Road, our electrical Green Mountain Power substation, that's moving forward for upgrade. I found that out from staff at CVRPC, and we're going to have a talk about it to see what's involved, and what A&R needs to come in on, and if it is going to get a review process. It's Act 250 reviewable, let's put it that way. But that's moving on. They expect that to start happening. I don't know if they've actually, what steps they've taken, but it's moved up in the project list for Green Mountain Power. And I already talked about the regional plan and the future land use map and input. So I would figure maybe in May, we might see CVRPC reps here to get feedback on the proposed future land use map draft. And we found out that our timeline for the new regional plan is more flexible. We thought we needed to meet a June 30th deadline, We don't have to have the draft ready until September. And the full process of getting this adopted will happen in December of 2026. It's going to take many months to go through the review process with, what do they call themselves? The Land Use Review Board or whatever. The other thing is that I've had a meeting, very preliminary meeting with Brian Shoup and Dan Raddick from Warren. I was on their planning commission. I don't know if he still is, but priority in the, I'm tired, in the select board's work plan for this year, the priority item will be short-term rental regulations. And this is a hot button thing. We're actually looking at short-term rental narrative in the regional plan also. The number of towns that have ordinances or in the process of working on them, it's growing. I think towns are beginning to realize, as Brian has said about Waitsfield, is we can't punt on this anymore. And there is a issue on my road, Spring Hill Road, that brought me into this. It's we're going to be looking at quality of life and what do we want to be. Another
So, yeah,
town.
so Alice, are you thinking that this is gonna be a Mad River Valley
No,
coordinated thing at all?
no,
No?
No.
Why not? Don't you think it would be good if we all got together to coordinate
Needs are
something?
different. And we talked with Brian and Dan about that. The answer to that is no. It's gone the route of each town has individual needs. And the beginnings of it, this very preliminary meeting that I had with Brian and Dan, was actually to look at the ordinance that Warren has drafted, and it's quite good. It's also interesting to look at a number of ordinances that towns have in place. Some of them are quite strong. Woodstock's is one of the strongest I've seen. And we would also be then looking at a registry, but we are going to proceed with the ordinances first and look at the registry second. Waterbury is now in the process of developing regulations, and they're looking at the registry first and the ordinance second. And I've been told, no, ordinance first, registry second is a better process. You know, for here in Waitsfield, you go to something like the school presentation, the one that was at Harwood with the new education director, Department of Education director. And what people are talking about there is why do people want to come and live in Waitsfield, or maybe Moortown, or maybe Facein. And a lot of the comments had to do with community and wanting their kids to come with their kids and live in a very community-oriented environment. Changes from people that lived in New York and stuff. I didn't talk to Beth, and you probably know what's happening now is the person I'm trying to help with this sticky thing on Spring Hill Road also is a real estate salesperson. And what she's finding is people are buying houses for short-term rentals. So, how do you balance it? Do you need to balance it? What do we want Waitsfield to be? You look at what it is the town would want to accomplish or address in its ordinances. And we're not, that's kind of where it is. It was just a preliminary conversation. I keep wanting to call him Troy, but he's not. York and Larissa. Yeah, you're Larissa, Jonathan, are now working on a good way for the select board to address the work plan and procedures for it, which is really good. And and Larissa and I have already talked about email back and forth about short-term rental. So
Yeah.
I know that 4 of the 5 select board members want this as a priority item. And the planning commission will definitely have a role with input and opinions.
I think it becomes especially important, and I know Erica Strom and a few others have brought this up in wastewater meetings, but something we might want to get ahead of, when it goes online and we do start to create additional housing in Irisville, if there was something in place to make sure, just to restrict short-term rentals, whether it's a number, something, but I think it'll play an increased role because we don't want that housing.
Yeah.
We need,
And Woodstock has provisions for that. So right now it's just kind of a research thing and get ready to. Something that can be updated and changed and, at any time. In Stowe, the fire department drove the short-term rental regulations. They got tired of, I'm locked out, can you come help me calls. So, there are services.
Yeah. That's what I understand Warren's main driver was as well, is
Yeah.
calls about lockouts from temporary, short-term renters, and just not having a number to call, right? The services are under provided, and the town doesn't know who owns these, or who to contact to reach the owners of these properties. So that seems to be and that I think is why Warren went with the route of registry first, and then, although I don't know what they seem to have gotten mired also because there was a lot of, owner opposition to implementing it.
So the meetings will be open meetings. I mean, we're not looking to do anything in secret,
Yeah. No, I mean, it's certainly going to be fraught. I think if Warren, Waterbury, Stowe are any indicator, we're going to have a lot of public input on this.
Yeah, it'd be fun. No, I just look at it as, making good trouble again. So like Cory Booker, yeah.
I think that's where you got to balance the needs. So if you look at Warren, there's not enough hotel space. So, and there's condos. That type of spot might make more sense for a short-term rental than a neighborhood like Spring Hill or a neighborhood like so I think everybody needs to keep an open mind about it when the time comes to really dive into it.
Yes, you're right, Beth. And we talked about that too.
Good point.
Being open and looking at, we're not going to say nobody can have a party ever in their whole lives, but it does change the neighborhood. It does change the community in a residential neighborhood. What was I going to say? I forget. But anyhow, those were the really 3 big things I wanted to come up with, was the short-term rental.
If I can add something about the short term, I had a discussion with my husband about this because we rent our house out when we're in Columbia, and he was saying that if there could be something that would give the short-term rental people an advantage in marketing, for example, that they can say, oh, well, this is a municipal approved property, to put something that might encourage them to want to comply because it might help them with their marketing.
You know, we'd rather see long-term rentals,
Yeah.
you know, like rent to a family that needs a transitional space, or, you know, you know, the folks that would maybe winter somewhere else and rent their property for the whole winter season. The turnover. I mean, my neighbor has a list of every single problem you can come up with, including people pulling onto her grass lawn and waking her up at 11 o'clock at night, thinking that her house is the Airbnb. So,
Hey, gang, could we possibly table the short-term rental conversation for another meeting
Yeah,
when we can talk about it more fully?
Yeah.
I think that's, yeah, thanks, Emma. I think, yeah, we're a little after 9 here. I don't want to keep people too late, but I mean, it's clearly a really important issue and we're going to have a lot to say on it. But I think, unfortunately for us, it's true that we can't keep pushing it down the road. And unfortunately, Warren didn't get theirs through fast enough for us to really rely on them as a leader. So I think it is coming our way. But we don't do that today. Bob, I believe you'd wanted to address something as well at this point. I don't know if we have the time at the moment, but we can try to get that on the agenda for next meeting.
Move on.
Next
All
meeting.
right. All right. So next meeting is going to be, my calendar disappeared. It'll be on the 15th.
15th. Yep.
Great. All right. I think that's everything. And it will be everything. So let's, can we get a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. In a second.
Second.
Thanks, Beth. All in favor? I assume we're all in favor. Thanks so much for coming out tonight. Sorry for the late night.
Everybody.
See you guys in 2 weeks.
Right.
In 2 weeks.
Night.
Night.